Lord, let us hear with the ears of our soul and our heart when you call us to be the uniqueness of who we really are. Amen.
Amen.
Please be seated. The uniqueness of you, called to be by God into being. Last week, Father Stewart gave a sermon on belief and faith, and that it wasn't a static freeze frame, but a journey that evolves and changes. I don't know, that spoke to me quite nicely and very deeply, and I hope he's having a good time in Maui. So we're going to just take that little gem of wisdom that he gave us last week and run with it. So several years ago, I taught an art class called The Rhythm of Art. And basically what I did is I used musical rhythmic phrases and correlated them into visual elements to show art and how there is rhythm and repetition in art through different kinds of music phraseology. And there's a lot of them. There's call and response, ground bass, inversion, retrograde. But I'm going to use the call and response. Now there's no kids here, and this was supposed to go with the kids' sermon, which we're not going to have, I guess. But I have a volunteer, so I'm going to do a call. And I don't sing well, but she does. So, this little light of mine,
I'm gonna let it shine.
this little light of mine,
I'm gonna let it shine.
this little light of mine. Everybody.
I'm gonna let it shine.
Let it shine,
let it shine, let it shine.
Right, so that's kind of call and response. So, God calls us. And we have to have this awareness to listen. Then we have a choice to respond. Then we have a choice to actually act. And we are all, from the Psalm 130, wonderfully created and unique. And I think God calls us each in our own unique way. We are called to be through Him. And I'm going to use, from the readings today, we have actually 3 very interesting ways people were called. We got Saul, who was blinded by the light, right? You know, he had that pivotal burning bush, wham, bam, thank you, kazam moment, right? And then we have Peter. Now, this wasn't the first time that Jesus asked Peter to follow him, was it? The first time was like 3 years ago when he was walking along probably the same Sea of Galilee and said, "Come follow me, I will teach you to be fishers of men." So, Peter, I don't know whether he was slow on the uptake or what was going on, but we have really 2 opposite ends of the spectrum here. And then we have Ananias, who's he's in between there. And I think we're all one place or another, and we're all part of a process, and God starts this call. And how do we listen? Is it in a thundering, thunderstorm? Is it in an earthquake? That's one end of the spectrum. You know, the trumpet and all that kind of good stuff. Or is it kind of like Elijah in the first book of Kings, where God told him to go to the mountain and find, he would be there in his presence. And he waited. And he waited for the Lord to pass by. And I'm going to read this because I think it's very powerful. Then there was a great and powerful wind tore the mountains apart, and scattered the rocks before the Lord. But the Lord was not in the wind. After the wind, there was an earthquake. But the Lord was not in the earthquake. After the earthquake came a fire. But the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire came a gentle whisper. When Elijah heard it, he pulled his cloak over his face and went out and stood at the mouth of the cave. So he heard it in a small whisper. So there's the other end of the spectrum. When we listen with the ears of our soul and our hearts. And it could be a walk in the woods, or it can be driving, or in our everyday life. I think it's all different for each and every one of us. And then we have a choice. we can respond. There was Saul. Who are you? Who is this blinding light talking to me? And, he gets directions. And Peter's response, the Lord was going, do you love me? Peter's like, yes, Lord, you know I do. And it's probably kind of, he had just denied Christ, 3 times before the cock crowed. So he has, 3 times the Lord is saying, do you love me? Do you love me? Do you love me? And poor Peter, he's kind of hurt. He's like, yes, I do. And then, of course, we have how do you say that name? Ananias? Ananias, okay, I got it right. Who is already a disciple, and the Lord says, go to this guy's house who's persecuting me. Persecuting Christians. And he's like, okay, Lord, here am I will be obedient. So there are all 3 different ways of responding to God's call. And that is the ultimate call to follow him and feed his sheep. It's not a static freeze frame. It's a journey. You look at Peter. I think his is the best example of a journey of how to be called and continuously called. Jesus kept continuously calling him. And how did they all respond? Well, Saul obviously became a great writer, a zealous convert, went around all around the Mediterranean, writing incredible epistles and gospels. And Peter too, great founder of the church. And in his writing, he reveals divine power and knowledge of him called us by his own glory. So he too had this epiphany, but it came in stages. It was a journey. We are all marvelously and wondrously created. We are all precious in God's sight. And so as we mature along this journey, he will probably reach out his hand to us again and again to call us. And not the same way from the first time. It's not follow me, I'll make you fishers of men. It's follow me, feed my sheep. And so as we journey without this static freeze frame photo, as we mature, we not only follow Christ, but we learn to emulate Christ by reaching out our hands to others, to help others, to enrich others, and to feed God's sheep with his love. Amen.